Your harvest season will expose you to enemies. This is the second part of harvest time. We must recognize our harvest season. There is a time for sowing, there is a time for watering, there is a time for waiting, and then there is a time for harvest. And we must recognize when that season comes. We must not procrastinate in the season of harvest. It's not in the next 4 months. It's not in the next 4 years. When God opens a door of harvest, we must seize the moment. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I used to say, and I think most of you used to say, when I grow up, I will be so and so. When I grow up, I will be a farmer. Or when I grow up, I'll be a doctor. Or when I grow up, I will be a policeman. Now, it's good for you to say that when you are 8 years old, but when you are 30 years old and 40 years old, and you're still saying, when I grow up, I'll be a farmer. When I grow up, I'll be a doctor. Or when I grow up, I'll be a policeman, you definitely have missed your harvest. Because there is a time to expect something to happen, and there is a time for you to live in those things happening. So when it is harvest time, we don't procrastinate. We don't say things like, if God gives me opportunity, if God opens the door, He's opened the door, and you have to go in and harvest. Harvest time sometimes will appear at a time you don't expect. You have to lift up your eyes and see that the harvest is ready. When there is a harvest time, God opens great opportunities for us. Means the harvest is ready. It is available. It is open. The harvest is great also means the harvest is ripe. It is ripe. It's mature. It has come through all the cycle of maturation. It's in its fullness. And the harvest is great means the harvest is rich. It's abundant. Huge rewards. When God brings us to a harvest, He brings us to a harvest that is ready, that is ripe, that is rich. But as I said, it may not have come at the time you were hoping it would come. Sometimes when God opens the door, but we don't have what it takes, the laborers are few. Isn't it interesting that in the midst of great, we are dealing with few? Great opportunity, few laborers. It's like being in a room full of gold, sitting on a high shelf that you cannot reach. You can see it, but you can't get to it. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. What does that mean? The laborers are few means you don't have the right people. A harvest will put pressure on you and your staff. More people are required at harvest than at sowing. Why is that so? Only one person can sow a field, but that one person cannot reap the harvest of the field. So if you have 10-acre or let's say 5-acre land and you are sowing corn on it, one person can sow all the field. He can go out there and plant, because all he needs to do, make a hole and drop a couple of seeds in there, and that's it. But when harvest comes, the 3 seeds of corn has now become 1,000 on each stalk. And so what is required to harvest is greater than what is required to sow. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. It means that many times in life, you may be the one who planted the seed. God used you alone. But when your harvest comes, you're not going to do it alone. The danger with a lot of people is they say, well, I was here, I planted the seed, I was here from the beginning, and when it's harvest time, they want to do it all by themselves. They don't want to bring in other hands. They don't want to bring in other people. Your harvest time will require that you reach out to other people to come and help you to harvest. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Don't be narrow-minded at harvest time. You need to be broad-minded. Secondly, the harvest is ready, laborers are few, means you don't have the right experience. A harvest will put pressure on what you know. When the harvest requires sophistication. So let's say when you start on your own, you do very well. You sow seed, God brings increase, and then your harvest time brings you into a totally new world where things like the way you communicate becomes important. Even your dinner table manners is important. At the time when you were sowing, that was not important. But when greatness comes, you are exposed to a new world and you need better experience. So the harvest is great. The laborers are few. You need more people. You need to grow your experience. And thirdly, you need to grow your tools. You don't have the needed tools. A harvest will put pressure on your resources. The tools required to harvest corn is not the same as what is needed to harvest coconut. When the harvest requires different tools, you go for different tools. When the harvest requires bigger vessels, you must go for bigger vessels. You can complain about the harvest. You can complain about the difficulty. But every harvest time has a time frame. And when the time passes, you can't harvest again. And many of us here, God has opened big doors for us, but we don't know how to work with people. Everybody you work with, you sack, you fire. Everybody you sack, you fire. Everybody you sack, you fire. God has given you a big harvest, but you can't work with people. You can't work with laborers. And everybody you work with, you mistreat. If you're going to enter your harvest, you have to learn to work with people, love people, treat them well, pay them well, make them a part of your team. You have to learn new tools, new technology. You have to acquire new experiences. Why? Because the harvest is great. God has opened big doors. You can't go in with a small mind. You can't. If the door is large, your brain, your thinking, your capacity must also be large. You cannot act in your harvest season as you were in your sowing season. It's your harvest time. The harvest is great. The laborers are few. But to complicate it further, you are lambs going to wolves. What does that mean? It means your harvest season will expose you to enemies. Your harvest season will expose you to hostility, to competition, hostility, enemies. Because if you know anything about wolves and lambs, one eats the other. You're going to be in danger in your harvest time. Because when your harvest time comes and you start harvesting big things, that's when big wolves also appear. When you're doing small things, the wolves have no interest in you. Try doing something big. Enemies you haven't seen for years will pop up. You're going to deal with enemies you never imagined. You're going to depend on the level of your harvest, enemies at high places. Global level enemies, governmental level enemies. I'm not talking about that little witch. That's an easy one. I'm talking about conspiracies at high levels. When your harvest is so great that people feel threatened and are going to do everything to knock you off. If you want to harvest, get ready for wolves. That's why a lot of people leave their harvest untouched. God opens the door for them and they say, wow, too many enemies. As for me, I don't want enemies, so I don't want people to hate me. Then you'll be a permanent sower who never reaps. Permanently sowing, but never reap. Because anytime it's a harvest time, wolves are going to show up. People are going to try to sabotage you. And let me talk to most of you who are business people and doing business at a high level. Sabotage is normal. So when you are out there competing with wolves, shun the works of darkness and stay in the light. And when you stay in the light, you will be protected no matter how ferocious the wolf is. The light of God's word, the light of the power of God will deliver you. Wolves are territorial. They mark their territory. They eat in territories. They attack in territories. Lambs, they don't have territory. The territory of the lamb is the territory of the shepherd. Wherever the shepherd takes the lamb, that's where they're going to feed. So whilst your enemy is territorial and trying to fight you over this and that, just watch your shepherd, because he's going to move you from territory to territory, from place to place. In your harvest time, people may try to stop you, but the Lord is going to lead you from victory unto victory, from territory unto territory, and give you strength. That's why he says, I send you as lambs among wolves. It's not a disadvantage. It's a totally new way of operating. Because sometimes people may be fighting with you over one territory here, and all that you do is just watch your shepherd. He navigates you to another green pastures that the wolf has never seen before. And whilst they are fighting over that and fighting over that and destroying one another, you are here in your open fields enjoying the abundance of the Lord. In your harvest time, you keep your eyes on your shepherd. He is leading you as a lamb, and you keep your eyes on him. For some of you, you are fighting a territorial battle. But if you will pause for a minute and pay attention, you will just see God is pointing you to another field. Another field. Sometimes, if you're not careful, you'll be stuck fighting battles with people who are going nowhere. But the shepherd will take you somewhere. In your harvest time, the harvest will be great. The laborers will be few. You need to bring in laborers. You need to work with people. You need to bring in people. You need to coordinate well. You need to expand your experience. You need to seize the moment. And you need to trust the shepherd to lead you in the light into new territories. The wolves will be there, but they cannot stop you. Your harvest has obligations. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. I'm going to assume one, and I won't talk about it. But I'm going to talk about 3 things that are important obligations during your harvest time. What I assume, which I won't talk about much, is that every harvest time will favor you. It will benefit you. When you harvest during your harvest time, it benefits you. So you've sown a seed, it's going to impact you. You're going to eat of your fruit, the fruit of your labor. That's normal. But 3 things I want to bring your attention to. In your harvest time, first, you have to learn to give to the Lord. Many times during harvest times, people are so overwhelmed by what they are grabbing that they forget God. Remember to honor God with what He has blessed you with. Don't be so overwhelmed by what God is giving to you in a harvest season that all you do is to expend it on yourself. Second, in your harvest season, you give to the poor. Whatever God blesses you with, the poor must benefit from it. People who don't have must benefit from it. So, as you honor God for what He has blessed you with, remember also the poor, people who don't have, people who are disadvantaged, and help them. And I would say help the poor in such a way that you wouldn't need to help them again next year. In other words, help them in a way that gives them independence, not dependence on you every day coming to you for money, but help them in such a way that they can now build their own lives, generate their own income, and don't need gleanings from you again the next time. Because if all that happens is every year the poor comes to you, you're not helping them. You're not helping them to learn how to sow and reap themselves. So they have to learn how to sow and reap. So give to the Lord, give to the poor, And number 3, very important, you start sowing all over again. Whatever gave you the harvest, you have to go back and start the process. Reinvesting, starting the process all over again, because it's a cycle. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest shall not cease. So you don't reap and stop. You reap and sow for the next season, because the cycle must continue. Every harvest season gives us seed to start the cycle all over again.